Supposed to introduce, sorry. My name is Doug Cohn. I am a senior developer at a company called Crowd Favorite, and I'm here to MC the designer developer track for you guys today. First up, we have Joel Newcomer. Joel is going to be talking about tips and tricks for Pagespeed. Joel is doing development and maintenance for websites at Drum Creative, and I think the number he says is over 150 websites in his tenure there. And he likes to dream big and think outside of the box. And he's going to talk about caching, plugins that help you minify your code, and best practices when you're building custom themes. So, welcome, Joel.
Thank you, Doug. Welcome, everybody. Doug's the one who actually got me started 10 years ago on building WordPress websites. I'll jump right in. So, talking about the importance of high page speed scores. So, here's the first. Pretty much all you gotta do is install this Swift Performance Lite, activate it. Actually, Clifton discovered this a week or two ago, and we've been really impressed because it auto configs, and it's really smart plugin, and it's bumped our. We had previously used auto optimize. I don't know if any of you are familiar with that. It's a great plugin. You got to configure it correctly. That's why this is nice. It auto configs. So that's it. So I wanted to talk first of all about how important it is, because the more I dug into this, the more I realized how much it affects the effectiveness of your website in a lot of aspects of it. SEO, conversions, and ultimately revenue generated by the website. So first, so here's the things I'm talking about. So here are a few facts. Mobile people using mobile phones to access websites has made this a whole lot more important because they're slower on slower networks, and it's growing every year. 57%. I actually found some numbers saying 70%, but it's growing quickly, and it's more important than ever before to make sure your website loads fast on a mobile phone, because if you don't, you'll have a high bounce rate. People don't want to wait. I kind of touched on this already. One study showed that faster pages resulted in 16.5 increase in conversion rate and consistent improvement in revenue. So any time, resources that you invested in this, you'll get your money back, or you get it for your clients, and you'll keep your clients. Another fact is 53% of mobile website visits are abandoned if the mobile site takes longer than 3 seconds to load. And for every 1 second delay, conversions fall by 12%. This kid's definitely not going to wait for your website to load. And I also found, this was on, I slipped my mind, but this shows your bounce rate relative to page load time. So as you can see, it's very important that your page load time is as low as possible to keep that bounce rate down. And then, of course, SEO. Just in July of last year, Google has started using it to rank websites on mobile searches. So if you want to be found on Google, your website has to load fast. So that's, I guess everybody probably knows how important it is, but I just wanted to throw those facts out there. So how do we make sure our websites are loading as fast as possible, besides using that one plugin? So hosting, images, and then JavaScript and CSS, those are some of the big things that affect front-end web performance. Choosing a good host, you can pay $60 a month, or you can pay $600 a month, or you can pay $6,000 a month, or for whatever you want to do. But putting a little more money into a good hosting company, it you get your money back. Because, and if you, so there's managed hosting, dedicated hosting, shared hosting, and our company goes with a managed host called WP Engine, and we've been very happy with it, and it has made a big difference in our page speeds. So I highly recommend it. Doug had just mentioned Pantheon, so that's another one to look into for a good host. Those are both WordPress only. Hosting, or the Pantheon's not WordPress only, but it's PHP only. So one of the easiest is making sure your images are optimized, but it's kind of easy because there's technical pieces to it. So the tools for making sure your images are optimized: Photoshop, size them correctly before you upload them as much as possible. That make sure that they're, because I would say that the majority of a page, the load time, the weight of the page is mostly photos usually. Another tool, great tool, is TinyPNG. You just go to tinypng.com, drop your image on it. They have a plugin, but I don't use that. I can't remember why I don't use it. It's a paid one, okay. But one we just started using recently is Short Pixel. It's very good. It will go through all your images on your WordPress website and automatically optimizes them. And we've been very happy with that. It's worth every penny we pay for that one. Then lazy loading your images, and there are a number of different tools, and some themes even have it built in, lazy loading built into the themes or whatnot. But one that a plugin I love is this Lazy Loader plugin, and it's built on Alexander Farkas, I forget the name of Lazy Sizes, that's what it is.
What is lazy loading?
Lazy loading is when an image doesn't display until it's within the viewport. Thank you, Doug. So your page loads and you can see the top of the website or whatever, and the images down below haven't loaded until you actually scroll down. That greatly improves your speed. Then there are other different plugins. One I like is the Insanity plugin. And this is mainly because of clients. They upload images to their site that are way too big. So this plugin, you can be sure you play with the settings on it, but you can set a max size. I like to do 2,000 pixels as the max size. And different clients have different needs as far as like if they really want to showcase, say they're selling cabinetry or wine cellars or something, you want to go a little bit higher with the quality of your images. So you got to find a balance there. And then tools for optimizing JavaScript, CSS, and other resources. As I had said, auto-optimize has been great. It did take a little fine-tuning the settings because stuff would break if you, and you got to like exclude some JavaScript, some plugins choke on it and whatnot. But it brought our page scores way up for a lot of sites. It's a great tool, but just like I haven't had a whole lot of time to play around with this Swift Performance Lite, but I highly recommend you checking into it. It's been really impressive. It's good. Huge increases on our page speeds. And then of course, make sure your page loads only the resources it needs. So like if you're building a theme or building your own templates, make sure that the only JavaScript and CSS is loading for those templates that are needed for them. So a couple techniques. So how many of you build custom themes? Do we have any? Okay. So this first one here is when you're working on a specific template and say you need to load a jQuery plugin or something like that for some functionality, make sure you're only enqueuing that script on that page. And so this is in functions.php. So if it's, you can do a check and say, is this that template, and then enqueue the JavaScript you need for that template. And then something I've been doing also within jQuery is, if I'm having, say I have some JavaScript in my theme, and like I'm initializing a bunch of stuff, I make sure that the class is on the page that I'm loading it for. So there, I'm checking for, that's what that does down there. If the class exists, then run, load, initialize different plugins or whatnot. And then here's so the lazy loader plugin that I mentioned previously, it will automatically handle a lot of the lazy loading, but it loads the lazy sizes plugin, jQuery plugin. And so when you're working within a custom theme, you can do this. So, and it's extremely easy to use. It's just a matter of adding the class lazy load, and then instead of using source in the HTML, you just do data source, and that'll automatically handle all the lazy loading for that image. And then to get more involved for mobile responsive images, you have the option to set the breakpoints there. Each of the image for different breakpoints. So I was talking to Doug before this, and he was talking about WebP. This is something I actually I haven't dug into yet. I believe, I'm a firm believer, the more you learn, the more you realize you don't know. So digging in, I was like, this is one thing that Google will penalize you for if you're not using the WebP format. And I know it requires a different markup, image markup, so that's something to keep in mind. And like I said, that's something I discovered that I need to figure out, how to serve up WebP images. Does anybody here have experience with WebP? Doug does.
Not all browsers support it.
Right. Yeah. So that's why it requires HTML5 markup, so that it handles the loading.
Everything is Chrome now anyway, though. So.
And Photoshop requires a separate plugin to even be able to export it.
Right. Actually, ShortPixel, as I mentioned there, ShortPixel will actually change the markup for it. It can, so that service, it's a plugin and a service, and it'll output the markup for that. Like I said, I haven't tested it. I'm a little scared to do it, that it'll cause issues. But it's definitely something that worth looking into and getting good at, because it's the future, of image. And like, I believe all browsers are going to be supporting it soon. So.
But when you look at the list of browsers that do support it, it's pretty small.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, and that's why I haven't dug into it. But Google cares, and so I guess that forces me to care. And then this is something critical CSS. I've done stuff with that before. Has anybody done anything with critical CSS or know what that is? Brent? Yeah. So basically, this is loads. When your page loads, you can set it up so that the CSS that is needed for the content above the fold, which supposedly doesn't exist, the fold does exist, but so it'll load this. You can create, have the CSS inlined for the top of the page, so it loads immediately, and then you defer. You wait till the page is done loading to load the rest of the CSS for that page. So it makes a huge impact and speed for your website to only load, a few bytes of CSS as opposed to, hundreds of kilobytes or however many you might have. So I haven't looked into what was that plugin? Yes, Swift Performance Lite. I haven't looked into see if it handles, does anything with critical CSS, but, it does? Cool. All right. And do you know if it integrates with criticalcss.com?
I'm not sure.
Okay, so criticalcss.com is a site that the big reason I haven't done anything with critical CSS is because it's kind of a maintenance nightmare, because every time you make a change to the website or to the top part, you got to go in and update your CSS manually for that. But the service critical CSS, it's £7, which I think was like $9 or something a month for a website, and then it's £5 for each additional website that you have on it. It'll automatically generate your critical CSS for you, so you can defer your CSS. And I know Auto Optimize automatically has this built in. You can set it up on there, and Clifton mentioned that Swift Performance Lite, and probably Swift. I haven't looked into the Pro to see what all it includes.
I think it's a pro feature.
Okay, it is probably a Pro feature. Will handle generating the critical CSS for you. You could do it on your, you can manually do it, and I've done it, but I stopped doing it just because every time I made any change to the website, I had to go regenerate that. It was very time consuming to do, but I'm definitely going to be digging into critical CSS, the service, because I think it's worth the cost of it to reduce your load time. Things to remember, I put here, Google Pagespeed Insights isn't always right. I mean, I guess it kind of is right, but as far as it doesn't really know what you're doing on your page. It's just it's a machine. It's not a person. And so there are exceptions to the rule. So you can't necessarily go by that all the time. You also are stuck with plugins. Like I was working on a website last night, and it had a Instagram feed on it, and Google penalized me majorly for that because the images weren't being lazy loaded, but I'm stuck with the Instagram plugin because it doesn't and I can't change the markup of the plugin to lazy load those. So it's not always going to, you can't always get 100. It's not always possible to get 100 on Pagespeed Insights, no matter what you do, depending on your client's needs and whatnot. And then Google Pagespeed Insights is I feel like it's kind of enterprise level testing, and your clients aren't necessarily going to be enterprise level clients with enterprise size budgets to pay you to spend hours optimizing your website. So those are things to keep in mind. And then also, as you will likely run into issues when you're using plugins like Auto Optimize and Swift Performance Lite. If you're playing with the settings, you don't want to be working on a live website. Just something to keep in mind. JavaScript will break, CSS will break sometimes. Depending on how plugins and themes are outputting that stuff. But after doing this talk, the importance of making sure that you're getting these scores I've really felt it as like when I see the numbers about it and how much it affects conversions and revenue. Putting the time and the money into these resources is definitely worth the cost. Don't get frustrated. Don't stop learning. You may reach a wall of technicality. You're like, I don't even know what this means. Just don't give up at it. Try to figure it. Ask Doug. Doug knows more about this than I do. And then it's hard work, but it's rewarding. at the end of the day, when your site loads like that,
That's what good here.
it's worth all the time and the effort, and then pulling your hair out and yelling at the computer and throwing it. Don't give up on it. I did go through this a little quickly. Good luck with this. I hope you learned something from this. I realized how little I know about it when I started digging into it, but it's a lot of fun to do. It's getting there, tweaking things, and discovering these tools like criticalcss.com is really cool, and Swift Performance Lite, it's awesome. You check it out. So anybody have any questions? Go ahead, Brent.
Yeah, I'm glad you said what you did about how Google Pagespeed Insights isn't always right, because I found that to be the most frustrating thing about using Pagespeed Insights or the new Lighthouse audit tool. You might run it one time on one computer, and another,
Yep.
depending on the day of the week, that Pagespeed score for load time might be 20% off. The page speed might be 3 seconds one time.
Yeah.
It might be 8 seconds another time.
Yeah, I've definitely seen that where you can run it 2 times in a row, and one time it'll be 10 points higher than the other time.
Right. And so that's frustrating. So I kind of, my thing is I have to take a lot of that with a grain of salt and know that what I'm doing is like working for me and my client. But I guess what my question is what's more important to you, getting that page speed score as close to 100% as possible? Or are you looking at the timings, like the first paint, first contentful paint? Are you looking at all those timings to make sure that those are performing quickly? Are you looking at the number of requests? I mean, what metrics are you looking at other than just the page speed?
Yeah, that's a great question. The question is, when you look at PageSpeed Insights, is it do you look at what do you look at? So I think that's a great point, and that's something that I've kind of had. Who cares what your score is if your page loads in half a second? Because that's really the goal. So, and as he said, take it with a grain of salt. If your page load time is awesome on a phone, and it doesn't really, and this kind of goes back to what I had said earlier, it's not always right. PageSpeed Insights isn't, and that's something you got to. A lot of customers are getting more savvy. So like, hey, I ran my thing on PageSpeed Insights. Why does it say I have a 50 or whatever? And you're like, and so you got to be able to communicate that. That's and that's kind of something I would say is it's an enterprise level tool. We can pour more resource into it, but we didn't budget for that. And also, just look at different things, like maybe you should look at a different hosting company, managed hosting, or you want to reevaluate yourself. But yeah, I agree completely. I mean, I would say that the page load time is what you're going for. That's the bottom line. If you're and that's what the numbers as far as Google is looking at how long it takes to load your website.
The best thing about that is it's taking something that's pretty subjective and putting an objective number on it that's measurable, and you can move that number, right?
Right. Yeah.
When you test it on your computer, when I pull out my mobile phone and I've got 1x connection and it's taking 8 hours to download stuff, versus when you test it, that gives you something more objective, and you can test it repeatedly. We tend to compile multiple reports over time to give people an idea of their average, as opposed to just one test.
Right.
But it's all objective instead of, I loaded it on my machine and it's fast. Have a good day.
Right. Yeah, and it's a tool. PageSpeed Insights is a tool, and it tells you all the things that you can do to improve. And if you don't know what it means, just Google it. You can pretty much figure out what all the different things mean. And Google it with Word. How do I do X? PageSpeed Insights is saying this. How do I improve this in WordPress? And you just Google that, and you'll learn a lot just doing that. Yeah.
Is PageSpeed Insights the tool to
I recommend using GT Metrics if you don't want to be depressed, because because Pagespeed Insights is a, like I said, it's tough to get higher scores on that. So GT Metrics is a good. There are a number of good ones. I like GT Metrics a lot. I know there's what is it? Pingdom, yeah, that's the one I was trying to think of. Pingdom is another one out there. GT Metrics is, the only thing I don't like about it is lately I've been far back in the queue. Like I have to wait 3 minutes just to get for it to run. But PageSpeed, because most people care about what Google, ranking high on Google, and Google, they're kind of the standard industry standard. So it's a great tool. I think it tells you a little bit more than some of the others as far as things you can improve.
So is PageSpeed Insights telling us how Google is looking at it, or is it just giving us a metric to go by for us to optimize?
Well, we don't really know what Google looks at as far as SEO purpose. They don't tell us everything, but all we know is that speed is a factor for mobile ranking. And so if Google says, hey, we're giving you a 50 on mobile, then you might be in trouble as far as how you're ranking on Google. But although I'll say this, when I was reading, they said, Google themselves say that if your website has good SEO and you're established in whatever your market is, and people are coming to your website, that you're not necessarily going to be penalized. They said if your site's a little slower, if you have good content and so good SEO. Yes.
My question's about images. I have a client now that's an interior decorator, and so she's going to be doing her own blog, and I'm teaching her how to do it, and I'm trying to manage how many pictures she puts on a particular blog post and how to make sure that it doesn't blow up the website, essentially. So what plugin do you recommend? You were saying the Insanity plugin?
Yeah, it's IMSANITY. Yeah, Msanity. That one.
Oh,
Yeah, Msanity.
okay.
It automatically, you can set it'll automatically size it down to, a maximum of 2,000 pixels wide or maximum 2,000 pixels high. So that'll keep, her from uploading 5,000 pixel wide images, these 5 megabyte images. It automatically sizes it down before it actually saves it to the server.
And the lazy loading would help too, because
Yeah.
if she puts pictures later in the blog post, it'll load slower.
Correct.
Is there anything else you can give you a tip on?
Well, that's pretty much it. Go.
I've got one for that. I have a couple artist websites. You can imagine, you can go into cPanel and you set the maximum file upload size
Okay.
to like 500 kilobits, and they get a message that tells you, your image is too large.
I've done that. I did it at a meg, but I didn't know what was good. So you're saying 500?
Well, that's what I've been, because otherwise
Yeah.
it's going to be
Yeah, that's
2
a-
megabits, 5 megabits.
Yeah.
Right.
But short pixel.
Lower would be better, but
I'd go lower, but
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, there's a balance. Sometimes if you go lower, your image quality suffers,
Exactly.
and for an interior designer,
It's very important
right,
to have image quality for her.
yeah.
does Insanity work retroactive? Like if someone's got a few hundred pictures on a website?
I can't remember. Yes, it does.
It's a bulk
Yeah.
processor that you can run. You have to go in and do it manually, and it takes some time.
Yeah. Short pixel is I highly recommend that, because it can run through all the images on your website, and it sizes them very well. Yeah, good.
Any thoughts on comparing Insanity and Short Pixel in terms of weight of the plugin? And I know Short Pixel will reserve the original image in its original size in a separate folder. I don't remember if Insanity does the same thing.
No, Msanity, they kind of do two different things, where Msanity is more the size, like the pixel width. It doesn't, I don't believe it does any optimization. other than just resizing it. It just does a basic resize before it hits the server, and that saves a lot of server space, and it prevents that. Whereas short pixel is about compressing image compression. It doesn't change the pixel width of the image. Go ahead. Okay, yeah, I mean, you can do that in there as well. And I guess if you're using short pixel, you don't necessarily need Insanity. So there's kind of a.
No, we can use both of them. I just didn't know if one was better in terms of weight on the.
Short pixel is definitely better, and you pay for it. Whereas Insanity is a free option. Go ahead, Clifton.
We will be tweeting out his slides. So you did put it, that's Google Slides, right?
Right.
So we will be tweeting out all the presenter slides. So if you guys, want to know all those plugins that he was mentioning and didn't want to write them down, we will be tweeting out the slides later.
Yeah.
Question.
I was behind you. Go ahead.
So one thing that I started running into recently is render blocking JavaScript, and I'm using a plugin that has really done a whole lot of these things that you mentioned for me.
Mm-hmm.
But what I'm noticing is the JavaScript script that is blocking the render of my page is usually a Google script. So whether it's Google AdSense
Oh, right.
or a Maps API or something like that. So something that I've done was I manually said after 3 seconds, add this script to the page, it loads
Nice.
and it does what it needs to do. I'm wondering if there's a better way to do that, because obviously, so my map being at the bottom, but if you were to scroll really fast all the way to the bottom, it's not there, and then it, it
Right.
calculates. I'm using it for ads, so I mean, I have the space for the ad, but there's nothing there, and then it populates. And I've tried to do, less time but I mean, it's literally making the difference between 99 and 80 on, page speed. I'm wondering if there's any other way or better way to do it than the way I'm doing it.
Well, you can. There are tools to cache those
I
resources. I don't have that.
Something where you look at on jQuery's on document load ready type functions and defer it 300 milliseconds from document ready, as opposed to a specific wait 3 seconds, because then if somebody has a really fast connection and their browser is really fast, they are waiting the full 3 seconds, whereas somebody that's slow, it depends on when their JavaScript runs the 3-second timer as to when they get hit. Whereas if you wait for the document to be sort of ready or in a specific state, then you can hit that JavaScript and then it'll render that stuff. I would personally just probably use a CSS animation to put a little loading thing on there for people that have really fast computers. But
Yeah, I think what you're doing is probably the best. You can tweak it.
Yeah. I mean, with my tweaking, I'm having it. It's waiting for jQuery to load. Then it's setting a timeout.
Yeah.
It's just doing some different tests. I mean, down to 2.5 seconds or 2,500 milliseconds, but loading it then, and it's still affecting my page load. It was literally 3 seconds, which just feels so long.
Yeah.
The whole page is loaded, very quickly, and that just populates. But I do like the idea of, setting a loading
Yeah.
and minimum height so that it's taking up the space.
Right. Yeah. That's something that's kind of funny about Pagespeed Insights. Is one of the things you get penalized most for is Google Analytics embed codes and Google Ads.
I offer one suggestion too as well. I guess the true way of making sure that the map or any element loads without affecting your page load would to be a truly lazy load it. And to truly lazy load something, you would load it on scroll. So I don't know if that matters to you. You can do some fancy CSS stuff so it doesn't look as bad as it loads in. You can, I don't know if you've seen a lot of places
if they do scroll, it cancels that out and loads it then immediately anyways. That's a good idea.
It's a little bit more work on you to set that up, but
Don't mind more work.
Yeah, great input, Brent. Lazy loading, great idea.
Has anybody had experience playing with async code, parameter in code? You could add async to JavaScript stuff on a page, which will break it out of the DOM load. I mean, I know it's a solution. I don't know when it's always a solution.
It depends on what your goal is with it.
Yeah.
For things like Google Analytics, you can give it the async tag and it will.
Well, it's by default asynchronous.
Yeah, that one is. You could add your others to it. Where you get into trouble is if your scripts have dependencies on each other.
Right,
So
that's what I've run into a lot.
You have a little bit of code, and this can happen a lot with WordPress plugins where they inject a little snippet of jQuery dependent code into the actual document as opposed to loading a separate JavaScript file, which is nice of them because now you're not making an extra request.
Right.
But it also means that if jQuery is not the head of your document, it breaks that functionality
Right.
because it's running the queries in the page before it runs the stuff at the bottom of the page or the stuff that you're lazy loading. So it's a case-by-case kind of optimization.
Yes.
This may be way too obvious, but something I've seen with websites that have been turned over to me is way too many plugins, and they're being driven by the themes. Saying, hey, you need WooCommerce, hey, you need layer sliding, push slide.
Right.
And as soon as you turn off those JavaScript, CSS heavy
Yep.
plugins, you see the median boost.
Yeah.
But you will get annoyed by those warnings saying, hey, this thing requires these plugins, but it doesn't.
Yes, that's something I didn't touch on, but that's a very good point, is making sure that you're using plugins that load resources correctly, that minify and keep their resource usage low, which Slider Revolution is not one of those. and using good quality themes that manage resources well. Any other questions? Right.
So in Jetpack, right, there's a function, even in the free Jetpack, for content delivery networks.
Oh, right.
And there's a little, you turn on to put only your images in the content delivery network. I've tried that, and it takes a couple days, it seems like, for
Yep.
them to get in there.
Right.
But that seems to speed things up. Now, I haven't tested it, but it just seems the pages load quicker that way. However, I've had a couple sites where the pages also, the pictures are kind of goofy looking after, so I've taken it back off. So,
Oh, really?
so I've used it, but then you have to make sure to check back for the next couple of days to make sure it's displaying.
There's a couple good plugins that do that, but like Joel said about WP Engine and Pantheon, they just take care of that stuff for you.
Right.
They have the edge servers and the CDNs all built in, and I've never seen an image out of sync with what I pushed up
Yeah.
on their platform, so they're really good about that, but they have that type of stuff just built in the platform, so you don't have to think about it.
It's built in, yeah.
Yeah, so the questions about
Setting up
CDNs,
CDNs, yeah.
and I didn't touch on that, but CDNs are very important. And as Doug mentioned, that we use WP Engine, so I kind of don't even think about CDNs because that's just checkbox, like turn it on, like okay, that's taken care of for me. But yeah, that's definitely something. And I know auto optimize, and I'm assuming that Swift Performance Lite probably I'm sure they both have options to set up work with a CDN, like Max CDN or something like that. Any other questions?
Do the plugins that do that, do they remask the domain for SEO purposes so that your images don't look like they're coming from Max CDN, they look like your domain?
I'm not sure about that. And
Really explain to me, yes.
Doug's saying it's an option to
The
mask.
default typically is the, abcdf.maxcdn.com because that's what they have. You have to go into your domain settings and basically set up a CNAME service that points to that masks their domain. And then you're gonna go into the plugin settings and tell it, hey, cdn.mydomain.com is the source of the images, not the maxcdn special name. But almost all of those services support that. You'll see that, like, once again, WP Engine and Pantheon abstract that away for you. So if you give them domain management, we have that to do, so WP Engine automatically generates their CDN URLs and they don't let you override provide that unless you reach out to customer support and you go through that extra step. And then they basically do a find replace on their URL with your updated URL, and we plug in the CNAME settings and the registrar, and it's good to go.
But am I correct, because I'm not an SEO specialist, am I correct that there could be an SEO hit and all the content not being tied to your domain?
Yeah.
If it's on a, sorry.
Go ahead.
If it's consistent like that, yeah, Google's smart enough, they know what's going on.
Yeah.
Okay, so it doesn't,
I think it's more important that you have alt tags, I believe, on those.
but your images and your videos and that kind of thing, even though they're no longer tied directly to your domain.
Well, they're all tied to the same subdomain though, and you're loading all the same resources on there. Google's smart enough to know that that's
Yeah.
what's going on.
Yeah, that authority's on the root domain name, so even if you use a subdomain name, that's fine. But if you don't use a subdomain, you have all your URLs at like maxcdn.com, whatever.
Yeah.
Obviously,
You might see it a hit if your image, if it was important for your images to rank in image search.
Right.
You wouldn't see it
Yes.
affect your like page's actual SEO really, I don't
Right.
think.
Right.
You know where Google shows you the images from your site and image search and that bar with that?
That might change your rankings in that particular place, so if the type of ranking is important to you, you definitely want to optimize the naming of your CDN.
Well, I would think that since Google wants you to use the CDN, that they're smart enough to figure out that those are your images.
Unless you're using like a custom built CDN or something that they don't know about, they're gonna know who the big CDN providers are and how their domains are structured and things like that. They'll get it, typically.
Yes.
I have no idea what you're talking about. What is the
Okay, sorry. Okay. All right, for everyone who doesn't know anything, don't know what a CDN, it's a content delivery network. So it serves image resources from whatever server's closest to the person who's loading it, and
They'll have
is
like
that
20 servers that have a copy of the
Yeah.
image on it. And instead of my computer going all the way to Seattle for that, it'll go to Atlanta because that's closer.
Okay.
And so their network abstracts all that away. But
So it's something to look into if you have a lot of images.
Yeah,
on your
especially
website.
for your web, that was client.
Yeah, that's so funny. I'm like, I think I
Yeah,
need to
I
know
would
what this
definitely
is.
look into it for that client.
Okay.
right? Any other questions? All right, well, thanks for coming.